Hello rugby fans and welcome back to Rugby Today, where we're going to do a quick dive into round 10 of the United Rugby Championship, which of course is going to be broadcast live and exclusively on FloRugby for USA based rugby fans. And we have an extra perk for our non-subscribers and subscribers, depending on how you like to get your content, where we are going to be broadcasting our game of the week live on our social platforms of YouTube and Facebook, and that match is Cardiff versus Benetton, which will be on Saturday afternoon at 1:45 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to catch some great rugby action and see what FloRugby has to offer, make sure you check out that match. It's going to be an absolute cracker between two teams who are very finely matched on the overall sort of performances thus far this season, even if Cardiff are a bit ahead of them on the table, but it's a big match to check out. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the biggest news pieces from the URC this week. And of course, there's only one place to start, and that is in Wales, where the path appears to be paved for the current owners of the Ospreys Y11 Sports Group to buy Cardiff Rugby by the Welsh Rugby Union. And this is kind of twofold. Of course, it's a bit of a blow for Ospreys in that, not a bit of a blow, a massive blow. And it would appear that they will be the team that are the odd one out when Welsh Rugby goes to their proposed 3 teams in the URC. That would leave us with Cardiff, the Scarlets and the Dragons if they all remain in that format. And it's a real blow for the Swansea side, who overall have been the most successful Welsh URC team across the board since their founding. And just a major blow. You really feel for the players, coaches, and everyone involved with Ospreys, because it appears that the writing is on the wall at the moment. Without delving too much into it, it does appear the one positive perhaps, and not for Welsh fans but for rugby fans as a whole, is that the Black Lion from Georgia look like the team that will replace the Ospreys in the URC, which will be just massive for Georgian rugby. There has obviously been lots of calls for them to join the Six Nations over the past few years, and perhaps this takes them one step closer to that goal, because at this stage Rugby Europe's an incredible competition, but Georgia dominated year in, year out, so perhaps we could see them take that one step closer. Obviously that's down the line, but getting their club into consistent top level competition like the URC boosts their chances of pushing on and building on what they've already done in the EPCR Challenge Cup. So very exciting for Georgian rugby, a real blow for Welsh rugby, but of course nothing is confirmed as of yet. Looking further afield, there was discussion of USA based URC teams, but that feels to be more of a long-term project. If that comes around, that would be very exciting and something we'll obviously discuss more in depth, but there's no point speculating on that now. Across the board, the URC round 10 is an interesting one because of course the Six Nations is just a couple of weeks away, so several of the teams will have very mixed selections as they rest their international players who are going away to camp. Particular Ireland, they tend to give their players to Andy Farrell and they go off to Portugal, and they're unavailable really for these 2 rounds. But as an Irish rugby fan, that's very exciting because we get to see plenty of young talent, and the headline in terms of those selections this week has to be Munster's back row of Sean Adogbo, Ruan Quinn and Brian Gleeson. They were all-star talents at under 20 level, and all 3 have such high ceilings, to the point that you would really expect to see them in Irish squads sooner rather than later. In fact, Gleeson might well have been capped back in November had it not been for that really nasty elbow injury he suffered against Leinster. On the topic of Sean Adogbo, it's a massive week for the Adogbo family and Cove Pirates Rugby Club, of course, because his bigger brother Edwin Adogbo has been called up to the Irish squad, and again he's another player who would have been capped in November had it not been for injury, and he might shock a lot of people and actually start away in Paris, or at the very least be on the bench, because he is such a unique player and been in banging form this season. His brother Sean, it feels like, has an equally high ceiling in the back row, so very exciting times for Munster Rugby. On the topic of Ruan Quinn, he's really been one of Munster's standout players every time he's played, as has Brian Gleeson. So it feels, after 2 terrible weeks in the Investec Champions Cup, Clayton McMillan might have seen what he wants from the senior squad and might be ready to turn over this squad and start getting these young guys into the regular matchday squads. And he's also named Evan O'Connell, nephew of Paul O'Connell, on the bench, and he is another very highly touted player in Irish rugby, and actually could be what Irish rugby is missing as a whole, because by all accounts he is a line-out nerd and expert, very much like his uncle. So let's see how that develops. There's no point putting pressure on the young guys, but this might be the time that Munster Rugby start to look to the future, because what we've seen is the squad has a cap in terms of its potential, and we are relying far too heavily on the Irish internationals of late. So let's see if these young guys can play really well. In the Southern Hemisphere, the DHL Stormers have named a really exciting squad for their first up clash with the Sharks. They're playing them in back-to-back games, which personally I love. I think it's really cool, and it kind of goes back to, for example, what the Champions Cup used to do with those Christmas back-to-back matches, and what sometimes you see in the NFL where teams play each other in close proximity. So they have gone with a very interesting 10-12 combination in Sasha Feinberg, Ngomazulu and Damien Willemse, which for me feels like the future of the Springbok position there too. So that'll be really interesting to see. Kubus Reinach gets the start at 9, and that makes it an all-Bok sort of spine of the team. But one player I would love to highlight is Imad Khan, who's been nothing short of sensational with every opportunity he's had for the Stormers long term, and he feels like the long-term halfback partner to Sasha, and that could just be the most exciting 9, 10, 12 combination in the world. So keep an eye on that. One final news piece on this, and less so news but more one point to keep an eye on in the URC this week, is that the top 6 sides already have a bit of a buffer over positions 7 through to the end of the log, and that could really expand even more. At the moment, 6th place Munster are 9 points clear of 7th place Lions. Could that jump make a massive sort of gap? It'll be really interesting to see, because what you might then have is just those shootouts between the top 6 and an all-out battle for the final 2 spots in that knockout round, and of course a position in next year's Champions Cup. So something really to keep an eye on there is how much does the log separate between the top 6 and the rest, or does it at all? Does that gap close, and do we have some shocking results? It'll be really interesting to track. So in terms of a full preview, I'm just going to go match by match with my picks, and I'd love to hear your picks, and especially the ones you think I might have got wrong, in the comments below. So make sure you give us your picks below. In terms of the previews, there are 3 matches this evening in terms of the UK time at 7:45, and that is going to be Edinburgh versus Bulls in Edinburgh. I'm backing Edinburgh to win this one because they have named, by the looks of things, quite a lot of Scottish internationals in this one, so that'll be really interesting clash. Pierre Schumann is starting there, and I believe Darcy Graham and Duan van der Merwe. Bulls, I haven't seen their team as of yet, but I would imagine they'll come quite strong, having brought their best team up for the Champions Cup clash against Poe last week. Munster versus Dragons. I think Munster get back on track here. The Dragons have been really, really impressive over the last 6 weeks, but this is a big line in the sand moment for Munster Rugby, who actually probably haven't been as bad as we think they have. It's just been silly things like discipline that's really let them down in recent times, and you'd expect Clayton McMillan to get that right. Then we have Ospreys versus Lions. This one is an interesting one. How do the Ospreys rock up to this in terms of a mental state where, you know, players know probably that they don't have a future with the club? So let's see how that one goes. I'm backing Ospreys to win at home, but the Lions have looked very good recently. I'm just going to back the Ospreys to give a big performance and kind of put themselves out there for potential clubs to pick them up. On Saturday, we have Scarlets versus Ulster. This one's a really interesting one for me. 2 sides that have, I think Scarlets personally have picked up form recently. Ulster have been one of the form teams of the competition this year. I'm going to back Richie Murphy's side to keep rolling and pick up a road one here. Initially, I thought the Scarlets, but I'm going to back Ulster on this one. Then we have Stormers and Sharks. I'm backing Stormers to win this first clash, but I think the Sharks might get them next week in Durban, but we shall see. So Stormers for me in that one. Connacht versus Leinster. A huge news piece there too, with Connacht opening their new stand at the Dexcom Stadium, which just looks phenomenal for anyone who's seen it. And I think Stuart Lancaster's side are ready for an upset, especially with Leinster missing so many of their international players. I think Connacht are going to win in front of their sold-out home fan base, so that's going to be exciting. Then we have Zebre versus Glasgow. Even without their main frontline players, I think the Warriors take this one. And then finally, closing out the action, that match that we are doing live to social, Cardiff versus Benetton. I'm going to back Cardiff to take the win at home. So that is our quick URC round 10 preview video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, let us know your predictions in the comments below, and make sure you check out FloRugby for all of your top level club rugby needs. Thanks again for watching the video.